Hello, welcome to my channel. Lately I've been looking into the area where the Yakama Indian Reservation is and posting videos on people that were missing there and Jane Doe's. And so I found this list at the FBI, and it says the tragic deaths or disappearances of at least 16 females or in close proximity to the 1.3 million acre Yakama Indian Reservation, all but one of which occurred between 1980 and 1992, have long and understandably been a source of great concern for members of the Yakama Nation, law enforcement authorities, and the rest of the community. Over the past 28 years to the present day, these deaths and disappearances continue to be reviewed and, where possible, actively investigated by the FBI, the Yakama Tribal Police, and or the Yakama County Sheriff's Office. These deaths, which are listed chronologically in the table below, have led some in the community to believe that a serial killer was operating on tribal lands. And I have this because right now I am doing Shari Dee Sampson Elwell because I don't think she has a Charlie Project or anything like that because she's not missing and they found her remains and she's not a Jane Doe. So I'm trying to add in some of those that are not on the Charlie Project and they're not on the Doe Network so that I have all of them, but it's. So here's the list they have. They have Sheila Pearl Lewis, August 1980, homicide vehicle impact. Subject ID, yes. I don't know how to pronounce that. Lesora, Yvette, Eli, 1982, accidental drowning. But was it an accident? We don't know. Subject ID, NA. Celestine Spencer, which says hypothermia, 1982, and it says NA, but some believe that was actually a homicide and not hypothermia. And then we also have, so there's dispute of whether these are accidental deaths or not. Clydell Alice Sampson, 1985, homicide gunshot, subject ID yes. Teresa Suezanne Branscomb, homicide stabbing, subject ID yes. Babette Crystal Green, 1987, homicide, subject ID no. Bertha Cantu, 1987. She was stabbed to death. Yes, convicted. Teresa Renee Stahl in 1987. Another accidental drowning. FBI, no, NA it says. Janece Marie Wilson, 1987. Homicide beating. Yes, charged. This one, Karen Louise Johnley Wallahee, 1987. Missing person. Subject ID. It says NA, but that's because, I don't know. Daisey May Tallman, suspected homicide, no on the subject ID, that was 1987. Unidentified body, 1988. Likely cause of death unknown, subject ID NA. Yeah. And Rozella Lou Tulee Sohappy. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I don't know if that's actually pronounced Sohappy. 1989 homicide beating. Subject ID no. Joanne Bed John Wyman homicide. Subject ID no. Shari Dee Sampson Elwell homicide. Subject ID yes. Alice Ida Looney 2005 inconclusive. It is significant to know that of these 16 deaths or disappearances, 10 are believed or are known to be homicides. Of these 10 homicides, murder charges have been brought in 3 cases. During 2001, John Bill Fletcher Jr. was charged with the 1987 stabbing deaths of Teresa Branscomb and Bertha Cantu based on a DNA match. Then during March 2009, Samuel Posada was charged with the 1987 rape and murder of Janece Marie Wilson. It appears that neither Fletcher nor Posada is linked to any other deaths in question. Relevant information regarding these deaths was entered into the FBI's National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime after the center was established in 1985. Logical suspects were identified in 3 of the remaining 7 known or likely homicides. Although significant evidence regarding the identity of suspected perpetrators was developed in 3 of the 16 cases, the strength of the physical evidence and witness statements were not sufficient to meet the necessary high burden of proof required in our criminal justice system. In other cases, the recovery of only limited skeletal remains exposed to the elements for significant periods of time before discovery continued to serve as substantial obstacles in the resolution of these matters. So if you have any information on those cases, whether you feel like it's relevant or not, please contact the authorities and give them that information, because that will help them. Evidence collected in these deaths was recently undergone another extensive review and analysis. After a March 2006 meeting with the then United States Attorney General Alberto Gonzales on the Yakama Reservation, the FBI embarked on a comprehensive data collection project, which included the assembly of all available records from all federal, tribal, and local law enforcement agencies regarding these 16 deaths, which were then converted to digital form for a renewed and end-to-end analysis. And you can pause this and read this. I don't want to read all of this, but I'll leave it here and I'll scroll down right now. And you can pause it and read it if you want to. So, and then we were looking into the death of Shari Dee Sampson Elwell. And I was looking for a list because I had read on, it said Reservation Death Ray Specter of a Serial Killer, the Seattle Times, January 31st, 1993. And it talks about Yakima County, Toppenish. The remains of 13 women have been found across the vast Yakima Indian Reservation since 1980. So from 1980 to 1993, there were 13 women. All died violently. Most were Indian. So I was trying to find the list of the 13 women from 1980 to January 1993 that died violently that it mentioned in the Seattle Times. It says, none of the cases have been solved, and some wonder if the slayings are the work of a serial killer, the Yakima Herald Republic reported. The sexually mutilated body of the latest victim, Shari Dee Sampson Elwell, was found December 30th off Old Maid Road in a section of the 1.3 million acre reservation closed to non-Indians. She was strangled. Melford Hall, who oversaw criminal investigations here for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, says the killings were part of why he retired in 1989 after 22 years. The deaths still haunt him. They'll probably say he doesn't know what he's talking about, Hall said recently. But then you look at all these names. 11 of the 13 victims were Native Americans. Most were born and raised on the reservations and abused alcohol. Most were found in remote areas where time, weather, and animals wiped away evidence, Hall said. Most of the victims were in their 20s. At least 8 were mothers. Some were stabbed, others beaten or shot to death. 2 drowned, and 1 apparently was run down by a vehicle. Foul play in 3 of the deaths has been tentatively ruled out by some investigators but not by others. Hall suspects alcohol is a key in the slayings. He said, "My own opinion is this guy sits at a tavern someplace and waits for an intoxicated woman and grabs her," he said. So you remember we had 2 different women that were both grabbed at a tavern. And one of them for sure said she said that she was grabbed by a stranger, and she was abducted, and she was raped, and she pressed charges against them. And then he threatened her family, and then she allegedly got in a vehicle with his brother, which was a maroon pickup truck, and then she disappeared and nobody ever heard from her again. And we don't know if the bartender allegedly said that he saw her get into the brother's pickup truck. So I found this very interesting when it said Hall suspects alcohol, and he says, my opinion is this guy sits at a tavern someplace and waits for an intoxicated woman and grabs her, he said. He said the list of 13 deaths was compiled by the Yakima Herald Republic through news clippings, interviews with current and former law enforcement officers, and records obtained through the Federal Freedom of Information Act. It could be incomplete. 2 additional Indian women, Karen Louise Johnley and Daisey Mae Tallman, both in their late 20s, have been missing since 1987, the newspaper reported. The Tribal Police Department refused interviews on the slayings. FBI spokesman Dick Thurston in Seattle said all the deaths were investigated by federal agents. Except for the Elwell slaying, all the cases are closed, so they could be reopened if new information surfaced. And I think that they have been reopened since then. Hall complained that there has been a lack of coordination effort by law enforcement agencies. And I also note that I believe they've corrected that as well. A lot of times we would call the FBI and they'd say, just send us a report, he said. They spent millions of dollars over there on the Green River serial killings and wouldn't spend anything over here. The Yakima County Sheriff's Office has sought assistance in the reservation slayings from experts on serial killers. Detectives in 1988 asked the Green River Task Force for help in at least one of the deaths. Among the obstacles to solving the case is the lack of missing persons reports, says Sheriff's Deputy Dave Johnson. It is not unusual for tribal members to leave the area without informing relatives or friends, he said. Some victims were missing days, weeks, or even years before their bodies were found. It's kind of like the Green River victims, many of whom were prostitutes, Johnson said. You have individuals with no permanent address. He said there has been speculation that the deaths could be connected. Serial killer unlikely in 13 reservation deaths, FBI agent says no. Okay, this was a different one. So later on, it comes out in February 1993, there's a thing where they don't believe that there's a serial killer, but I don't know. I like, hearing what the retired Hall had to say. He thought that somebody was sitting there at a tavern in the parking lot waiting for a woman and grabbing her. So I thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to make sure that I included it in my playlist with my videos and tried to get some of the other names that weren't in the Doe Network for Jane Doe's, weren't in the Charlie Project, because some of them aren't listed in places like that. And I don't even know if everybody that went missing is even reported missing. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you found that video interesting, and please feel free to leave comments. Don't forget to pray for the loved ones of these families, and have a great day. Bye-bye.